Soldiers of Israel, you stand before the walls of Jerusalem.
To understand the Gaza conflict, we must first take a step back to its origins. The roots of the conflict can be traced back over a century, deeply intertwined with the history of the Israeli-Palestinian struggle for land and sovereignty. In 1948, after the formation of Israel, Palestinian refugees fled to neighboring regions, with many settling in Gaza, which was then under Egyptian control.
The tension in the Middle East over the Gulf of Aqaba blockade develops into full-scale war, with reports of heavy fighting between Israeli and Egyptian forces along the Gaza Strip and the Sinai border.
In 1967, during the Six-Day War, Israel captured Gaza from Egypt. This marked the beginning of an ongoing dispute over the territory, with both Israelis and Palestinians claiming historical and religious ties to the land. For decades, Gaza has been a focal point in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Today, it remains under Israeli blockade, with Hamas controlling the area since 2007, while the Palestinian Authority holds sway in the West Bank. Fast forward to October 7, 2023. A major escalation occurs when Hamas launches a surprise attack on Israel, marking the start of the most intense conflict between the two sides in recent memory. Thousands of rockets are fired into Israeli cities, while Hamas militants infiltrate towns near the Gaza border. In response, Israel declares war and begins airstrikes on Gaza, aiming to destroy Hamas infrastructure. Over 1,000 Israelis and nearly 10,000 Palestinians are killed in the initial days of violence. Israel's military response is swift and brutal. The Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, begin an intensive air campaign, targeting Hamas strongholds, tunnels, and weapons caches throughout Gaza. As the bombing intensifies, the civilian toll rises. Thousands of homes are destroyed, and essential infrastructure, like hospitals and schools, are targeted. While Israel claims it is striking military targets, the collateral damage to civilians in Gaza is staggering. The humanitarian situation in Gaza becomes dire. The destruction of power plants and water supplies, combined with the blockading of food and medical supplies, creates a crisis of unprecedented proportions. With over 10,000 Palestinians killed by early 2024, Gaza's civilian population is suffering. Many are forced to live in overcrowded refugee camps, while hospitals are overwhelmed with casualties. The international community begins to call for an immediate ceasefire and humanitarian relief.
And the critical importance of protecting civilian lives during military operations. Indeed, a ceasefire would enable us to surge humanitarian assistance, begin to restore basic services such as electricity and sanitation, and enable Palestinian civilians.
Global powers become more engaged in diplomatic efforts to end the violence. The United Nations calls for an immediate ceasefire, while countries like the United States, Russia, and the European Union push for a peaceful resolution. Despite these efforts, both sides remain entrenched. Israel demands that Hamas disarm, while Hamas insists on the lifting of the blockade and the return of Palestinian lands. These talks falter, with each side accusing the other of war crimes. In early 2024, a temporary ceasefire is brokered by Egypt, allowing aid to enter Gaza. However, the truce quickly breaks down after several months, as hostilities resume with increased violence on both sides. While temporary ceasefires provide brief moments of relief, the underlying issues remain unresolved. Hamas continues to launch rockets, while Israel carries out periodic raids into Gaza, seeking to dismantle Hamas's military infrastructure. By December 2024, Israel escalates its ground operations in Gaza. Thousands of Israeli troops are deployed to secure key areas of the Gaza Strip, with heavy clashes occurring in densely populated neighborhoods. The Israeli military strategy focuses on cutting off Hamas's remaining strongholds and eliminating their ability to launch attacks. But this expansion only leads to more civilian casualties, further exacerbating the humanitarian crisis. Now, in March 2025, the conflict is at a critical stage. Israel continues its military operations, while Hamas refuses to agree to a ceasefire that does not include full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. Hostage negotiations continue, with efforts to secure the release of remaining hostages from both sides. But the road to peace remains unclear, as Israel cuts off electricity and water supplies to Gaza in an effort to pressure Hamas.
When it comes to the negotiations that you're referring to, first of all, the special envoy who's engaged in those negotiations does have the authority to talk to anyone. Israel was consulted on this matter. And look, dialogue and talking to people around the world to do what's in the best interest of the American people is something that the president has proven is what he believes is good faith effort to do what's right for the American people.
Is it just about the hostages, or are they also talking about the president's plan to take over Gaza?
These are ongoing talks and discussions. I am not going to detail.
Negotiations to release hostages are ongoing, with the United States playing a pivotal role in securing the release of American hostages.
We are helping Israel in those discussions because we're talking about Israeli hostages. And we're not doing anything in terms of Hamas. We're not giving cash. We're not giving $6 billion like you hear other administrations give. And in fact, I got 59 hostages out, and we gave nothing. In 59, we gave nothing, not including what's going on with Hamas. I mean, I consider that something where we're helping Israel for the most part. We had a couple of hostages, as you know. We got a couple of hostages out, American hostages.
Israel and Hamas are engaged in talks mediated by international powers, but both sides continue to demand substantial concessions. The success of these negotiations could pave the way for a more significant ceasefire agreement, though challenges remain as both parties refuse to compromise on critical issues. The Gaza conflict is far from over, but the possibility of peace remains. The coming months will be crucial in determining whether diplomacy can finally put an end to the violence that has plagued Gaza for decades.